What is up, everybody? You are listening to the Anti-Gravity Group podcast. My name is Braden Carlson.
I'm Taylor Jesse.
And my name is Shane, or as you might know me, Postart.
And today we are talking about the logistics of flying a big rocket. Not just flying it, I guess. Building it, transporting...
Owning it.
Yeah, all of it. Everybody wants a big rocket, or, well, it seems like not so many people do anymore these days, but a lot of people might be interested in building a big rocket and hesitate because they think everything about it's going to be a little bit difficult. And I regret to inform you that you are correct. But before we get into that, I wanted to say at the top of the show that if you have a question or comment related to the topic of the podcast, or just rocketry in general, or you want some advice, you can send an email to rocketvlogs911@gmail.com, and we will feature you in the fan mail, so to speak, portion of the show at the end of it. And also, I just wanted to show off here for a second. For the listeners that are non-video, I'm holding up my YouTube play button. Been a long childhood dream of mine to have one, so now we have it. I wanted to put it in a rocket. It's way bigger than I thought it was going to be. So we're going to get to that eventually. But I feel like the big rocket discussion should probably get kicked off by Taylor, considering the build was started by Taylor, and he has to deal with the nuisances more than we do.
Yeah. I mean, we all, well, at least you and I kind of knew of the challenges of at least, you know, maybe owning a big rocket. We didn't have one, but had heard about some of the complaints. And the question was, are these old guys overreacting about the difficulties of big rockets, or is it true? And maybe a little of both, but yeah, it's just cumbersome and takes up a lot of room. I started making the parts to our 12-inch Punisher, I guess a couple months before we started building it. So that was like the first step after getting some of the big parts. And immediately it becomes obvious, like, the labor involved. It, like, is just everything from a normal rocket times, like, 100. Because I'm just sitting there for, like, me and Matt spent, like, 2 hours just cutting centering rings and bolt plates and just, like, you know, multiple sheets of 5x5 Baltic birch and using the router and going really slow, cutting half-inch plywood. And you're like, wow, we have all of our centering rings and bulk plates, and you weigh them all, and it comes to like 25 pounds.
Yeah, how many rings and bulk plates were there total for that rocket?
So 4 for the altimeter bay, 1 on the nose cone, 2 for the lower, like, altimeter bay. So that's 7. And then maybe 4 centering rings? I can't really remember. So yeah, like 11 circles to cut, maybe.
Right. Yeah, and I don't it's really easy to, like, forget how big those things are, but, like, effectively each one of those is taking up 1 square foot of plywood with offcuts. So, like, it is a lot of, I guess it's 11 square feet of plywood, which is, especially now, wildly expensive. But we're going to get into the cost later, but it is just a ton of material.
And it ends up being more like 13 or 14 square inches, or, you know, or I guess not square inches, like 14 by 14
right
square. Because, like, laying them out that close is just like asking for a disaster.
Yeah. I mean, you basically have them end to end at that point. And
yeah,
if you consider the router bit, that's not even possible.
Yeah, true. Because you're losing a half inch on each one. And then inevitably, while you're setting it up, you will cut like the first 2 or 3 wrong.
Yeah, especially when there's 7 motor mounts.
Yeah, I definitely messed up a few of those. Not even just laying it out. Like, I have a horrible problem with well, first we can just talk about the Jasper jig for people like just scratch building. If you've never used one, it's a big like acrylic sheet with a bunch of holes in it that screws onto the base plate of your router, and there's a little like 1/8-inch peg or whatever, and so you kind of put the peg in the hole for that corresponds with the diameter of circle you want to cut in your plywood.
Yeah, they're really nice, but it is worth noting that if you're going to go buy one, buy the professional one. If that's still like just like they have a cheaper option and then like the pro grade stronger one, buy the stronger one, because the cheaper options are super, super easy to break. It's like a piece of 1/4-inch balsa that just like, if you put any weight on it, it snaps, and you're attaching an entire plunge router to it.
The pro one also has a lot more holes, which is nice. So I think I can go all the way down to like a 1-inch hole. So like pretty much any rocket stuff that I would want to cut is possible. The other one, some of the other ones, you can do like, it's also every 16th inch increments, whereas I think the other ones are like every quarter or half. I don't know.
Yeah, and you can go up to like 24 inches, can't you?
I don't know on mine, but yeah, they're pretty big. We definitely were maybe, because we were on the 12-inch holes, we were maybe halfway, a little more.
Right.
So.
Well, weird departure. Sorry. Cool tool. If you like to scratch build and have a router, awesome tool. But anyway, go on.
Well, after that tangent, I don't remember what I was talking about.
You were talking about cutting the rings and getting into the Jasper jig, but we really didn't explore on that any further. You just we went on the tangent. Maybe your advice was just to buy the Jasper jig.
All
right. Well, anyway.
Maybe. Anyway, that's not important. But note to self: don't get distracted with cool tool products. But anyway, we cut all those rings and bulkheads, and then we cut the fins, which also each one of those fins was 36 inches long on the root, and 12 inches about span. So they were properly huge. That took almost the whole sheet of plywood.
A whole 5x5 or 4x8?
5x5.
Oh yeah, it's Baltic birch. That's the size it comes in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just that today is probably hundreds of dollars worth of 1/2-inch and 3/8 plywood. But again, sorry, I'm getting ahead of us here. But one thing that I kind of wanted to delve into was just aside from the extra effort involved with building it, the biggest rocket any of us had built was my 7.5-inch Iris, which is a big rocket. Like, don't get me wrong, it's 7.5 inches in diameter and 12 feet tall, but going to our upscale Wildman Punisher, which Taylor was just talking about, is 12 inches in diameter, about 16 feet tall. Everything is just a massively different scale when you go to a rocket this big, and I don't think any of us were really ready for it until it started happening. I remember the first day I saw the pieces. Like, you can think about how big a foot in diameter is all day long, and if you walk up to a 12-inch diameter rocket, it's still just like mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to get more used to it, but still, like,
that means we need to go bigger.
Once you start handling it is when it becomes like, you like put your hands on the pieces and you're like, Jesus, this is a like massive thing. And so I think when me and Matt first started that day, we made some of the pieces for the rocket. That was like the first. I mean, I had the tubes at that point already, but like just holding like this massive piece of plywood and going, yeah, this is a fin. It is bigger than like a lot of rockets I have laying around. So
I had a good concept of that too because I made the templates with my vinyl plotter. So, but somehow still like looking at that and being like, whoa, this is the size of the fin, just still didn't quite connect with me until I saw the tube and nose cone and everything else that went with it. But just realize if you're going to be building a big rocket, you are going to consume raw materials unbelievably fast if you're scratch building it. If you're just having a huge kit built by somebody, then that's one thing. But yeah, if you're making all the parts from scratch, it adds up quick.
yeah, I was lucky that I was able to get all the plywood for free from my work. So and I didn't steal it, by the way. But I do carpentry, and my boss was going to get some plywood, and I was like, hey, I need some Baltic birch, and he's like, yeah, you it's on me, you can have it. So I was like, cool. Worked out great for us.
Yeah,
That
it
was
was
the perfect price.
It was awesome for us because we certainly, if we're going to go down the tangent of materials used a lot more of every other material than we could have ever foreseen. We ended up using like a whole 1.5 gallons of West System epoxy.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest surprise for us, and because everything else we kind of knew what we were getting into to some extent, but we had no idea how much epoxy we were going to use, and we got pre-glassed phenolic tubes, so we thought we were getting out of that a little bit, but then you start doing like fillets and stuff, and you realize it takes like 6 pumps of West System to do one fillet, and then that's like just mind blowing.
Yeah, we used a 2-inch fiberglass tube to pull and shape the fillets. Like everything just on that scale is insane. And it didn't help that we decided to add a layer of tip-to-tip, 6 or 10.5-ounce glass. I think it was my really heavy glass. On top of already having put a layer of carbon fiber on the fins. So there's probably 0.5 gallon of epoxy just in the composite work on the fin can. It is just grotesque to think about. So much so that we even had to find a shop that had West System epoxy in stock because we ran out. And we had to drive an hour from Taylor's house to go buy some more so that we could finish building this rocket before I had to go home.
Yeah, we were lucky we were able to find a shop that carried some. Shout out to Rockler.
Yeah, that was awesome. That place is super cool if you like woodworking.
It's so
Speaking
cool.
of which. Oh, yeah.
Just a big woodworking store I'd never been to, and suddenly we're like, we need all of these tools.
We had to raid Matt's colloidal silica as well just to finish the fillets.
Yeah.
I think that's another one that kind of went over our heads when we were thinking about how much epoxy we were going to need, like doing all the internal fillets on the rings and fins inside the fin can must have also been like 15 or 20 pumps worth of West Systems, which I guess is
Yeah.
about an ounce, right, per pump, something like that.
Yes. I believe it's like an ounce per pump.
So it's something like 1/8 of a gallon in just the fin can assembly before it even got glued into the tube.
Yeah, and we're mixing it with colloidal silica, so like we're just blasting through the silica. And we had one of the big, a nearly full, like I don't know what size that is, the big tube of silica.
Oh yeah, the huge one.
Yeah.
So when we went into building the Arcus, which if you're unfamiliar is our second big project, it's 9 inches in diameter, but it's just as tall. We used U.S. composites epoxy because it costs about half as much as West System, and we were prepared to run through it like Drano runs through your sink this time.
Yeah, it didn't use as much as I thought we would. I think partially just because the fins aren't as big, and also because for whatever reason the tubes didn't soak it up like we thought they would.
Yeah, just having the raw cardboard, we all thought it was just gonna drink it in, and it really didn't, which worked out fine for us. But yeah,
If I had to do it again, I would have pre-coated those tubes with epoxy before we glassed them.
right. That's Bryce Chanis did that with his 24-inch tube. I believe he had coated it in epoxy and let it cure before we then added fiberglass to it.
Yeah. I think it would have actually added some strength in our case. I thought it was just going to soak it all up if we didn't do that. Like, I thought that would be a way for us to save epoxy by pre-treating, but I think we would have actually got better penetration by doing it that way. I don't know if it's because we did a sock, maybe. I mean, we got it as wet as we could, so I'm not really sure what the deal was with that.
Yeah, definitely lessons learned on that build. No more shrink tape for us, or shrink tubing. Shrink tape would probably be fine.
Yeah.
The shrink tubing was not the right call.
Yeah, the people love it, but it just wasn't what we needed on that project.
No, flashback to Postar just sitting there, spinning the tube for like an hour and a half.
That was per tube as well. It took forever. I mean, Taylor was there with the heat gun, like slowly going along while I spun the tube, and it was awful.
All of this to say that if you're considering buying phenolic tubing from Lock Precision PML, and the option is there to have it pre-glassed, it's worth the money. That's what we're getting at here. It's definitely worth the money. But
yeah, anything past 7.5 inch, if you can get pre-glassed, do it. Like, I don't know. I do, even if we were to, for some reason, build another 12-inch rocket, I would still get the pre-glassed phenolic.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, that's not even a question in my mind. Yeah, it's definitely worth it, and it's because I glassed my 7.5-inch tubes, and we're going to have to glass all the 7.5-inch tubes that we bought, and I'm just really not looking forward to it. And doing a 7.5 doesn't even seem that crazy anymore, but just knowing what's coming is really emotionally taxing on wanting to actually do it.
Back to the construction of giant projects. Obviously, with every rocket project, there's some sanding involved. But I don't think there is any way we could have been prepared for the amount of sanding. Even on our latest, on the Arcus, our latest project, after having done the Punisher, we thought we were making some steps to avoid sanding, and maybe he had even equal or more sanding.
Yeah, I would say especially on the Arcus. The day before Taylor and I left for LDRS, after Postar had gone home, we spent 10 hours in his 90-degree garage wet sanding the tube. 10 hours, and that was our second day in a row of spending hours out there sanding those things. Like, if you want a nice finish like we have for some reason decided is necessary on every rocket, just get ready, because your arms, I mean, the next day my arms hurt like I had been pumping iron from sanding the tube.
Yeah.
Like I was all hunched over, back just demolished.
Your back's in knots. My shoulder and back muscles hurt, and your chest
then
feels weird.
Riding 8 hours in the passenger seat of the professional masterpiece, a construction full-blown fleet van that has the worst passenger seat comfort on the planet.
90-degree seat back, pretty much.
Straight, yeah. Yeah, you can strap yourself in and really get your posture corrected if you wanted to. But if you want comfort, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, other than using a mind-blowing amount of material and just an unbelievable amount of time for especially paint prep, it is kind of surprising how much building a giant rocket is like building any other rocket. It's just everything is bigger, which sounds really dumb to say because, like, obviously, but it's the same concepts through and through. Like, if you've built a 4-inch rocket and it's come out good, you have the basic skill set needed to build a 12-inch rocket. It's just there's an amount of mental toll and extra time that it takes that just really can only be understood by doing it.
And not to say that, I mean, the way we built it is, or our big rocket is based, which I believe is, a good way to do it. It's basically is the same building techniques, but on steroids. Not necessarily of like a little model rocket, but, your standard high power rocket. But, a lot of people think I'm building a big rocket. I need to make it, I don't know, that this is just so overbuilt. And like, you could definitely go too far where you like overbuild stuff, but there's definitely some things with the big rockets that you need to think about, but it's kind of just common sense. Like, make sure your couplers are strong because there's going to be a lot of leverage on that. But other than that, everything's pretty much the same. Really, it's really just make sure your couplers are like bulletproof.
Yeah,
other than that, like you're good doing everything the normal way.
I don't really know how well we highlighted in the video series on building the Punisher how beefy that middle coupler is either, but it's fiberglass on the inside, and then another piece of coupler is cut and sliced down the middle and shoved in there and glued in. That is also fiberglass on the inside. Like, I could probably table drop onto that coupler and break my back before that coupler starts to flex.
Yeah. It's definitely strong enough, I would say.
Taylor thinks, though, that the all-propellant X cluster with the 05500 and 6 M2050s would shred it.
I don't know if it would shred it. I'm just worried about the fin construction.
It's fine. We dropped it on your garage floor to test it, and then we plowed
I forgot
half a
about
mile of a field with it. It's good.
I mean, there's no reason I shouldn't believe that it's fine. It's only because I'm the one that made them that I have doubts, and knowing that they are just foam in the middle. But we put a ton, like, 3 layers of composites over it.
Right.
And they're bulletproof.
Yeah, there's...
So, yeah, it should be fine. But there's still the part of me that goes, well, what if?
Yeah, because there's a layer of carbon over the foam. It's worth noting, if you're not familiar, that the fins are foam cored. It's really hard to describe without a visual. The shape of the fin is cut out with like a 2-inch buffer in the 3/8 plywood. And then there's a foam insert there. And then there's a layer of carbon fiber on each side of the fin. And then there's tip-to-tip glass. So there's another layer over that on the fin. And then we did a carbon fiber insert, the shape of that foam piece, but a little bit bigger on top of that. And this is all on top of 3/8 plywood. Those fins are bulletproof.
Yeah, they really are. And, after we built the rocket, it fell off the sawhorses right onto the concrete. So,
and it did great afterwards.
Not even a blemish, really.
What more could you ask for? Name something you think could be more prepared to fly on that cluster. Exactly. There's nothing.
As if we have more than one rocket that could handle that, or that could fit those motors.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm getting at here. But speaking of things in your garage, how about we move on to talking about the storage and transport of a rocket this big?
That's something that was kind of overlooked, other than the fact that I knew I had garage space to like hold it, but not really thinking about the like actuality of it, I guess. I mean, you better be ready to store or have a rocket that takes up a ton of space, because it does.
And if you don't own a van, get ready to rent one.
Yeah, we actually I drive a van for work, but on the first Punisher flight, we actually ended up renting one anyway because my van's kind of a big pile. So
not the new one though. The red Ram
the
Pro
new one,
Master,
the old one.
If
Yeah.
you're familiar, its code name is Clifford or the Professional Masterpiece. A godsend, unless you want to be comfortable in the passenger seat, like we just covered. But everything else,
Yeah,
fly or open the door from the outside. If you want to do that,
yeah.
too bad. It's just an anti-theft measure, really.
But yeah, I mean, you're gonna need either a trailer or a van, pretty much, to move the thing anywhere, and you need a lot of garage space. I mean, having one big rocket was annoying, but doable. Having two big rockets is really dumb. Don't do that unless you have like a big shed or like a big outbuilding.
Yeah.
Now that there's a second big rocket in my garage, it's like more noticeably taking up room. I can't just put it in the corner.
Yeah, we need a anti-gravity group workshop for sure.
That's the dream.
One of these
really.
days, we're gonna rent like a farmer's separate shop, just in like Anthony or Harper or in Argonia. I mean, there's a house.
You get Matt to buy a house in Argonia.
Yeah, there's a house for
Cash.
sale in Argonia for like $85,000 or something like that, and it has an attached garage. We've talked about, if we ever get to this financial position, just splitting the cost of this house and only paying to have the utilities on for like Airfest and Cloudburst, and then we just have a place to stay. We can just store rockets out there. The AGG Hype House.
It would be a perfect place to store the big rocket.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a 2 times upscale Arcus or something like that.
Yeah, and we could all have our 4-wheelers there.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Cause
Of course, we would have 4-wheelers and dirt bikes.
yeah, you have to.
We could ride them down to the field.
But yeah, at any rate, sorry to stray from the topic again. Transport and storage is a big thing to take into consideration, and it kind of extends well past the 9-inch diameter rockets as far as going the opposite direction. Because as a person that has a 2-car garage and 2 cars parked in it, and also 3 different 7.5-inch rockets in there, they take up a decent amount of space. It's tubes are fine, but once you have fins on there, my God.
Yeah, it's like this 7.5-inch Sumo behind me. That's why it is in here right now, because it was in the garage next to the giant Arcus, and it was just like impeding on my actual garage space, where like I'm pulling my car in and I'm like almost touching the big rockets, and I'm like, this is dumb. And then I look at all the 7.5-inch tubes that are over there that me and Braden bought, and I'm like, what were we thinking? Were you going to build fleets of 7.5-inch rockets like that?
Yeah, it's so small.
Nobody has room for that.
It's so tiny.
It's still going to
easily
happen.
transportable.
But,
Yeah, it has to happen now. We already bought the tubes. And Postart's building one as well.
And it's freaking sick. But,
It is just like the Junior Gemini.
Yep.
That's a deep cut meme that nobody's going to understand, but we're going to move on from that, because if you do manage to transport your 12-inch or bigger rocket to the field, you're going to have to prepare that thing to fly. And my God, I think this might be the thing we underestimated the most, but in the wrong ways. Like, we kind of prepared for everything that we thought was going to be difficult, like putting it on the pad, and that somehow just went perfectly both times we did it, even though the rocket weighs 200 pounds. We only had 4 people. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a big, heavy rocket, but, like, the rail buttons are securely attached. Go ahead.
And you and I have watched so many videos of people flying big rockets. I feel like you just kind of learn a lot of tricks of people from watching videos of people struggling. So we're like, oh, leave all the motors out to save 100 pounds off the back end of it, and don't twist it.
Yeah. Here's the big part that we overlooked was like putting the rocket together. And if Matt were here, he would berate us for not keying it. But just like if you have a 12-inch diameter nose cone and every 90 degrees there's a shear pin there, and you put the nose cone in, it's not perfectly aligned with the shear pin holes, drill new ones. You are never ever going to twist that 12-inch nose cone just that little 16th of an inch you need to get those things to fit. Turn it till their holes are completely invisible and punch new ones through it, because it just will not happen.
Yeah, no shot. I think the first time we drilled shear pin holes in it, maybe the second time we put the nose cone back in after we drilled the holes, we just it's impossible. We shouldn't even try. Like, just drill new ones. So
yeah, I remember you telling me that, and I was like, dude, that's so stupid. Why would we drill them every time? And then right after the ground tests, when we went to put it back together, I was like, oh, yep, I'm with you on that one. We're not doing that.
What's dumb is we haven't been doing that we don't do that on the lower part.
For some reason, that feels
lining
illegal
that
to me because it's a phenolic coupler.
Oh, we have vent holes. That's why.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Big giant ones. That makes that process a little bit easier, because you can just jam a screwdriver in there and kind of pull it in place.
Also, if you do build a big rocket, you have to have giant sanding drums that go into your drill, and you need to have a cordless drill that you take with you to launch it.
Yeah, this is straight up non-negotiable. Like that is a requirement.
It will absolutely, it will not fly unless you have that. Like, I can't imagine. I mean, I guess it's possible but it's like with all the variables.
Yeah, moisture, like just every little tiny nuisance that could potentially affect the fit of the coupler into the tube is amplified by ridiculous numbers because of how much surface area there is with something that big. The first time we got there, we put the rocket together and it slid right together easy. We were just putting it on the stand, and then we almost couldn't take it apart. We had it apart overnight to prep it to fly, and the next day it would not go in. It literally happens that fast. And if we didn't have a way to just sand a ton of material away instantly, it would have taken us hours and hours to get that thing ready to go, just to get the upper section into the fin can section.
Even on just like 7.5-inch stuff, it's still a pain and a necessity to have the sanding drums.
Right. I mean, like with the 8-inch V2, I've got it sanded down enough that it fits pretty easily, but you have to, with fiberglass, it's a little bit easier because if you keep it really clean, it's going to help you out a lot. But with phenolic, or especially cardboard, I'll talk about the cardboard incidents with the Arcus here in a second. There's like so much fluctuation in the size, and these little pieces that chipped off and are now wedged in between the coupler and the airframe, and all of this, it's a problem. It's a huge problem.
And a particular problem, like one issue, is that at least on like our big 12-inch rocket, I mean, the Arcus is light enough that you can do it with two people, but like if you're planning on showing up by yourself, you better have like some homies ready to help you out, because like we need a minimum of like 3 people to get the Punisher together and situated. Especially the nose cone. Like once that nose cone, you have to get it perfectly straight on the way in and not hesitate, otherwise it'll jam, and then it's like you're wiggling it and trying to get it unjammed, and 2 people are holding the body tube and one person's yanking on the nose cone, and things are getting intense and heated, and I mean, 3 people I feel like is ideal for dealing with the big rockets.
Yeah, it's not even like there can be a single person that owns a 12-inch rocket, but there is no rocket that big that's not a group project on some level. Like, you could not just go out there, build and fly a 12-inch rocket by yourself.
Well, I mean, I guess Bryce is kind of a good example of that.
Doing it by
Yes.
himself?
No, like owning a big rocket.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then having to have people help him
Yeah.
fly it, basically.
Right. It's not a process you can decide to do or not do. Like, it just is that much of a problem.
Like if I wanted to go, like if someone came over to my house right now, well, I guess that's a bad example, but if I wanted to go outside and take the Punisher out of my garage and stack it up, I really don't know if I could.
Yeah.
I could probably do the Arcus, maybe. Like, it would be ugly, but I think I could maybe pull it off. Punisher, no shot. Like, there's no way I could.
Yeah, it is it's a family project. It's a family event.
Especially like assembled, I literally cannot move it by myself. Other than like bear hugging it and moving it a couple inches across the floor.
Yeah, you remember when we were getting ready to ground test it and Matt had to go home and we couldn't ground test it that night because it was just two of us trying to put this thing together and move it around and get everything all situated and pack everything. Impossible.
We eventually did, but
yeah.
it was like the bare minimum of what was possible to get the rocket together with two of us.
And that actually works as a great segue to the next part of the prep discussion, like black powder charges and just recovery in general, because there's, first of all, massive charges. And like these are, like I said in the last one, I'll prep a rocket and have ejection charges just ready to go in the rocket on the drive there. But our charges on the Punisher on the main side were like 16 and 20 grams. Like, those are dangerous. So it is not something we just have ready to go. We prepped them at the field.
Although I can't believe we haven't thought of this. We should definitely measure. Like, we could easily measure those out in advance and put them in like little containers.
I literally just thought
that
of
are
that
pre-measured
at the exact same time that you said that. Yeah, I was like, wait, why don't we just like throw them in pill bottles or something?
For the listeners, the two times we have, or I guess our three big flights so far, we've measured it at the field.
Yeah, with the wind blowing and like a scale that only works when it feels like it. So who's to say how big those charges really were, but they worked.
And me mixing up my the drogue and main, or getting confused about the amounts of powder I'm putting into each one on the last Punisher flight we did.
Yeah, Taylor.
Twice.
Yeah, I was going to say, he reversed it, and then he was like, oh my God, I'm so dumb, and took it apart and started putting it back together the same way. So we almost had to cut him off from the electronics department. We almost had to hand it over to Matt.
It was an early morning, though, after a late night, so
No,
give him
late
that.
night, then an early morning.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough caffeine in the veins yet.
Yep.
But it worked. One interesting thing, though, that kind of it steps into the viewer mail portion, so to speak, a bit, because it was Bryce's comment contribution about packing parachutes for a rocket this big, and how it's kind of a whole different ball game than a standard high-powered rocket parachute. And it really is, for those that aren't familiar with how we did the recovery on the 12-inch Punisher especially, because with the Arcus, it was still like standard issue high-powered rocketry parachutes. It was a complicated setup. It was two main parachutes, and each one had their own deployment bag. But the Punisher kind of stands out because it's a 28-foot man-rated parachute with 35 lines or 36 lines or something like that.
I think it has 28 lines.
Does it? Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Maybe it has more than that. I don't know.
No,
I was thinking it had one for. It was 20, like one gore per foot.
I don't know. The dumb thing is that they are labeled, and we've looked at them a million times. We probably
Yeah.
should know at this point. But it's got a custom-made deployment bag that Taylor had Gene from Fruity Shoots make for us, and it gets packed, at least in our eyes, like a professional parachute packing job. If it were, it would probably be half the size that we get it down to, but it is pretty impressive how small that parachute gets, and it's, we could talk for an hour alone on how to pack that parachute and the research that we each have done in trying to figure out how you're supposed to actually pack the thing. But it's go ahead.
In my opinion, you definitely like have to have a deployment bag if you're doing anything close to that size. I mean, especially if you're using a man-rated chute or any sort of military surplus chute with all those shroud lines and thin nylon, because it will just melt together so easy, because it really is like silk. I mean, it's like the real lightweight, well, it's lightweight nylon, but there's a lot of it. The chute weighs like 13 pounds on its own.
Right. That was I hadn't seen it in person, and when I got there, I was like, I can't believe how thin this is. Like, I know it's ripstop nylon, but I feel like, ironically, nothing is stopping me from ripping it and demolishing this parachute.
Right. And if it gets any nick or anything, it basically will rip like that. So that's the kind of the bad part. So that's like having a deployment bag to fully protect it and to facilitate and the neat deployment, which we have on video from both flights, and it is so beautiful to see the shroud lines stretch out and the canopy pull out.
Same with the Arcus too. Like, that whole deployment process was just so gratifying to watch on both those rockets.
Yeah, the dual chute deployment from the bags was like,
and the fact
so
they were like
perfect.
identical, like almost the exact same time frame on both of them. It was just like, wow. If there was a nose cone on that, it could have been the most perfect flight there ever was.
Yeah, next time we'll get the nose cone.
We'll glue it on. If anybody suggested that, I don't remember, but we could give it a shot. Packing the parachute. Yeah,
man. Packing the parachute was stressful, but I feel like we pretty much have it down now. It's hard. I don't really know what to say about it. It was a lot of work. But also not.
Yeah,
like I don't know. There's a learning curve, and then once you figure it out, it's like okay, I can do this confidently. That was the whole thing. It's like, I'd used deployment bags before, but I don't know if I can pack a man chute.
Yeah, the first time we did it took us like probably an hour to get that thing packed, and I think the second time was like 10 minutes.
Yeah. And once again, like, having someone there to help you makes it so much easier. I've done it by myself, but I can't get it as tight, like, for sure. Like, I can pack it more efficiently and probably better for sure with someone helping.
It definitely.
But yeah, I don't know.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it just definitely turned me into a deployment bag fan too. Like, now I just want everything to have a deployment bag. It's so fun to watch.
It really is. I was kind of already like that, but well, like Braden talked about earlier, like, the biggest rocket he had built was a 7.5-inch Iris. The biggest rocket I had built was a 5.5-inch Nike Smoke before the huge 12-inch 16-foot tall Punisher, which is absolutely insane. So
yeah, it's like a big jump, but to be fair, you did help me fly the 7.5-inch Iris.
I did.
So we had a little bit of credibility on our side, but
we kind of flew that together. I mean, you did all the electronics and whatnot, but
the fact that
all the day of stuff.
Yeah, the fact that Bob like just kind of allowed us to give this rocket a shot, having only one cluster flight under our belt cumulatively. I guess two, actually. And only having flown a single end motor 7.5-inch rocket prior and going straight to a O cluster 12-inch rocket was Bob Brown. If you're listening, thank you for believing in us, because I'm not sure if I was in your shoes I would have just been like, give it a shot. But hey, it worked.
Yeah, I mean, there was a big learning curve there for sure.
I think the thing that helped us a lot, though, was being so public about the build. And, I mean, a good handful of people that have done big rocket stuff in the past were pretty on board with what we were doing. And it was interesting. It was like when we showed up, everybody had already had their conversations about our rocket without us, just like between each other. People were asking all these questions that were like purely curated as a hive mind before we got there.
Yeah,
which is
there was
understandable.
definitely a strong energy about the whole thing.
Yeah, so people are like, so you guys did this, huh? We're like, well, only because we did this. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I see what the topics were like before we got here.
There was, Barrett, from what it seemed, there was a bunch of people, basically a group of people rooting for us and a group of people maybe not so much.
Yeah.
And then
rooting for the really cool flight.
Yeah.
We almost gave it to him.
Yeah, we almost gave it to him. And you don't have to cluster a bunch of motors if you build a giant rocket. You could just fly it on one.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, some might call that smart, but you might also not call us smart. So,
yeah. More is better.
Yeah, exactly. And one big thing, too, that I think we managed to overlook with flying the thing, which I'm kind of going to get into as prep as well, because we've got these little categories, but recovering it, especially with an extra 75 pounds of unburnt motors in it when it was in the middle of a super soft, ankle-deep dirt field. I can't describe to you the amount of energy that sucked out of us.
And the fact that we're like 4 young and fairly strong and healthy dudes.
Spry gentlemen, if you will.
Like, I can't imagine trying to, I don't know. That was a lot. The wind picked up right before we flew it. It came down with like an extra 60 pounds of propellant that it wasn't supposed to have. And
plowed the field for half a mile and picked up probably an extra 150 pounds of dirt.
And the thing about the C9 man chute is that it doesn't want to deflate.
Yeah, like we said, super thin and super light. Careful word to use there. You know, from a standpoint of what it could weigh with standard nylon. Very light material. Super easy to inflate it, like just with Matt running with it in your backyard, a very light breeze. Very easy to inflate parachute as long as the shroud lines are where they need to be. Very difficult to deflate because any amount of breeze will keep it up.
And so on that first flight, it landed in one of the worst spots it could, just in that it was in the middle of the big field,
like dead center. It couldn't have been in a worse spot.
No, what we learned, this is a good example of some big rocket knowledge that we, hadn't learned yet. Basically, the wind had picked up. It was dragging across the field. We drove as far as we could, and then we're basically chasing it across the field. Now, someone that had done that before would have just leisurely driven to the other side of the field.
And just met it.
Those unfamiliar with Argonia, it's just all wheat fields in a grid, so you can access 4 sides of each square mile of farm field. But
yeah, we could have parked up and had a snack while we waited for the wind to bring us our giant rocket.
Yeah, it would have just eventually drug it over to the other side. But of course, you're thinking, oh, I can catch it. I don't want it to get scratched up, even though it's completely
demolished.
obliterated
Yeah,
as
the
soon as
paint
it
is so
touches the
bad.
ground.
Yeah.
But so I'm like literally sprinting through plowed dirt. I get to the parachute and then realize that I do not have the strength or mass required to deflate the chute. So I just kind of like grab the shroud lines and try to plant my feet in the ground to anchor it. And every time a gust of wind came, it would like pull me and the rocket. Well, before I got there, every time a gust of wind came, it would pull the rocket like 20 feet at a time, which was nuts. But I grabbed onto it, and then we would move like 3 feet at a time, which was terrifying. It feels like it's just gonna like launch you.
Taylor definitely has more running stamina than I do too. And also, while I was running out there, I like stuck my foot in like a super deep little pit, and I was like, how stupid would it be to just like roll my ankle right now and then just be stuck in the middle of this field while Taylor's trying to wrangle the rocket? She's like, sorry, man, I can't help. I just sprained my ankle. It's really bad. So, yeah, but I just get up there. Taylor's just like, it's like one of those muscle man competitions where they're like playing tug of war, like feet, toes up in the air, not contacting the ground at all, ankles dug into like 4-foot long trenches, and it was still just like pulling him across like he was on a sled.
And it's like every part of it was just like to muscle failure. And so
Right.
it's like we finally get the chute deflated, and then it's time to carry the rocket out. And it's like
With those motors,
the nose
probably
cone,
what, like 140 pounds still, 170 pounds.
well, it was just the booster. Well, I mean, the whole rocket was there, but 2 people carrying the booster had 60 pounds of motor, and probably it could have easily been 120 pounds. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the nose cone.
It was heavy
also-
enough we could bear. Like, it took everything we had to carry it, basically, and with taking a lot of breaks.
The nose cone, for what it's worth, was not there because it has its own chute, and it was so windy that it drug it, landed nice, soft, right in the middle of the street, and then drug to the other side of the field the paint on the nose cone, which in any other circumstance would have been the nicest paint left on the rocket, also got destroyed.
It's actually the worst.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, it is.
it looks like you were just like dragging it across like one grit sandpaper because it was being dragged across asphalt.
Yeah, it was awesome. So cool.
The plowed field at least gives it like kind of a nice smooth scratched finish.
Yeah, it looks weathered too. It's like an overpriced guitar with the relic to it, because it's like all the layers of the
nice
paint,
patina.
and then down there's like some wood and some carbon. It's beautiful.
It looks like the rest of the Punishers do.
It really does.
Perfect.
But that being said, if anybody has a big company with a huge budget and wants to send us $5,000 and pay for the rock to get painted as a big billboard, hey, please do. Please do. Big flying billboard. We got you covered.
Lots of surface area there for whatever you want to advertise.
Yeah, we can make it straight up like a NASCAR. We can have a big title sponsor and then 150 other stickers all over it. Let's get this done. Let's get this P cluster flying.
I saw someone do that with a rally car recently, where they were just selling like sticker space to individuals. Of course, that means you're gonna have some questionable things on your car, but
Yeah, I was kind of thinking more companies, or we could do that though. That has been a thought of mine to be.
I know. Well, that's what I was gonna bring up. I'm like, we do that at least for like a small, a small space, not sticker bomb the whole rocket, because that would be lame. But
Yeah, well, I was thinking like if we had, we said, hey, we need X amount of people to donate X amount. You can donate whatever you want, but if you reach this threshold, your name goes on the rocket, and we can just have like a nice centered stack of names
yeah,
that help pay for the flight. Right next to the Raid Shadow Legends wrap or the Manscaped logo. The ultimate dream. But to summarize that whole prepping and flying segment, it is a lot of work. And I don't know if having just heard that whole conversation and summarizing it with that phrase could ever mentally prepare somebody to do it.
No, not until you actually do it. It's exhausting, but like nothing really matches the feeling of it all working.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. It is a ton of work, but it is definitely worth it. It is so unbelievably good, especially when all the motors lit, to just watch that thing take off so fast. The rocket weighs 200 pounds, and it just rolled out like nobody's business. And the slow motion footage of all the outboards igniting just instantly and together, so satisfying.
Every part of that flight was perfection.
If we could get the N up half a second sooner.
Yeah, that would have been. That was the only thing we could have asked for on that one.
But for that to be the
But
only
it was-
complaint,
Yeah,
it also went 3,000 feet higher than we thought it was going to. What a
yeah,
day!
it's pretty nuts.
That was Postard's first Airfest too.
Yeah.
That's quite an entry. And his debut with the anti-gravity.
Well, the
group,
proper
too.
flight wasn't at Airfest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Cloudburst, but the first one was Postard's first Airfest.
Yeah.
I guess technically the Cloudburst flight was his first proper flight as a member of the anti-gravity group, so to speak, because he had paid for part of the Arcus by that point. But yeah, so speaking of paying for, that is our final segment on this episode, because above all else, what we get asked more than anything is how much that rocket cost us. The Arcus seems to be a bit of an afterthought in people's minds, which is fine because it's kind of an afterthought in our minds as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because that is the cheap one. So I've got a screen open so we can really sit here and buckle down and, unfortunately, probably for the first time, completely price out what it costs us to build this thing. So, Postart, if you like to be the calculator guy, let's sit here and do this. This is going to be the current purchasing price of everything. Most of it from Wildman with the Wildman Club discount, and everything else basically is going to come from Lock Precision. And there's one component that we won't really go into where it came from, but we will tell you how much it cost. So, off the top of your head, Taylor, do you remember how much the tubes were?
I think we got 3 tubes and 2 couplers for like $840 shipped, I think.
Well, yeah, that's a shout out Wildman Rocketry, because there was some assistance.
That's not what
on
they
that
actually
price,
cost.
Yeah.
That's not full price. That's what we paid.
If you were to buy the stuff to build this rocket right now, just the tubes pre-glassed and the 2 couplers is $1,118 before shipping. So, what, Shane?
Which one am I counting for the total?
We'll do the current pricing.
All right.
Because we don't have any concept really of what we actually paid for everything, because all the hardware is going to be considered too, and that's used half of it.
Repeat the tube cost again.
$1,118.01.
Okay.
We're not going to talk about the nose cone. It's $400, and we'll leave it at that. If you know, you know. So up next is going to be the West Systems Epoxy. That's another thing that's a little bit difficult to consider, is the fiberglass and carbon fiber that went into it. But what's carbon fiber cost now? Like $48 a yard.
I don't know. I haven't bought any in a while.
I feel like it's safe to just price all the composite stuff to around like $250 just for the cloth.
With epoxy or without epoxy?
Without. Because we used like 4 yards of carbon, didn't we?
Well, no, it's like 1 square yard per fin section if it's tip to tip.
Right, but it wasn't. I guess, but each fin would be almost tip to tip.
It's still basically the same. So
1 square yard.
it's like
per
1
fin.
square yard per fin. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3,
It's like
4,
$150.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So about 9 yards of composite.
Oh, for each side of the fin.
Huh? Total.
Between carbon and fiberglass?
We used probably 6 yards of carbon and 3 yards of glass.
Okay. So 6 yards of carbon is like $150, $180, something like that. Let me pull up the Solar Composites website. We have to hash this out. This is important. We need to know how much we'll have to cry if we crash this thing. Standard 2x2 twill is currently, oh boy, let's get it.
Hold on. I got to go check something. I hear a noise in my house.
Oh. Okay. Standard 50-inch wide carbon, 6 yards right now, $113.94.
113.
I forgot I was doing laundry and it's a zipper hitting the dryer.
Gotcha.
The classic.
So $114 for carbon, and just put 50.
And that's for 3K?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says huge sale. Might consider buying some carbon right now.
I feel like it's just always on sale for like the last year.
They're so cool too. They'll just like, he's like, do you need exactly a yard? Because like if you want this width, I have this offcut, and it's going to be like almost 2 square yards if you just take this piece that I have sitting around. Shout out
Or
Solar
you get
Composites.
the end of the roll.
Yeah, exactly.
And he'll just give you the extra.
Okay. West System Epoxy right now, ungodly expensive.
Realistically, we use like a full gallon. We just didn't start with a full gallon.
Yeah, just put it down as $200. Because that's about what we just paid, right, Shane?
Yeah, I think it was 220 or something.
And then this is where things are going to start getting ugly. Well, we can consider recovery too. The parachute was 300, Taylor, 340, something like that.
Was it?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Just put.
I think it was. It was like. I think it was like 300
Okay, we'll go with 300.
or 330. That sounds familiar.
Yeah. Shoot.
I don't know. Put 300.
Yeah. And then once again, we're gonna price this out the way that we would have to price it out if we were replacing everything. So, hold on, let me make sure I'm logged in here, because you can absolutely bet that if we were replacing all this stuff right now, we would definitely be abusing our Wildman Club membership discount. So we are taking that into consideration. What were you gonna say?
That the deployment bag I think was like $230
Oh yeah, good point. And then
because it was custom and they had to make a pattern.
the shock cord was like 80 something. Because that was
it?
1-inch tubular nylon strap from REI.
But I think at its current price it's about $120
Okay, put $120.
because Matt just bought all of the stuff for the Arcus.
Oh, that's right. And the replacement pieces for the Punisher when we cooked the leader ends so good that we decided to replace them. All right, here's where it's going to get ugly, Shane.
Yep.
$869.39 for a full 9815 360 motor.
Ooh.
Just you wait. $453.59 for a 3840. So we'll need to multiply that by 3.
Is that with closures?
Yes. And a sealed disc.
So times 3.
Yep. Oh, God. Are these in stock? Here, I'll just add these to my cart and give you a number from there. So I just added 3 75, 25, 60 complete motors. And we're going to... K1000 doesn't exist, apparently. Give me a second here. 3 K1000s. 3 5120 or 1520s, sorry. Can't even read correctly. And the almighty Aerotech N3300 Redline. This number is going to suck really bad to see when Postar reads it back to us. So you have everything through the 3840 cases, right?
I do, yeah.
So just the oh no, dude. The 2560s and propellant is $3,181.42.
Wait, that's just the K motors?
No, that's all the motors and the 75,
Oh,
25, 60 hardware.
Okay.
And so we're excluding small things like all the hardware we had to buy and black powder and e-matches. But
I mean, I know I probably spent a good $120 on miscellaneous hardware.
oh, and the paint. How much was the paint?
That was about $120.
The decals were free. Shout out me. What else are we missing here?
Yeah, there was something I was going to say earlier, but I can't remember.
This is it. This is the climax, dude. If we ruin the Punisher, this is how much it will cost us to try
Well,
again.
but we didn't pay full price for everything.
Yeah, but if we
A lot of
ruined
it-
it,
lot of it-
and had to rebuild it, this is what we would pay.
I see.
And I think just based on that last number, if this rocket dies, it's never going to have a resurgence.
The motor hardware is really the big problem.
That's the rough one. Yeah, because just the hardware was $5,000.
Yeah. We had most of it.
Yeah, thank God. But if we
And we got deals on most of it.
if we dumped it all out
actually-
the back, or it came in ballistic and destroyed everything.
Oh, I don't want to think about it coming in ballistic.
Me neither. That is way too much rocket for that. It flew over the crowd the time it worked.
I
It
know.
was so far away. I was like, how'd you get over here?
Realistically, if the chute hadn't came out, it would have kept arcing and would have went over the crowd,
Yeah.
most likely. But yeah,
Well, it came out,
It
so
was
that's all that
scary.
matters. Put
shredded the
$125. So the Sky Angle Cert 3 large on there.
Well, we didn't use it on the first flight.
No, but we used my 2XL or my XL that I also paid for. So,
Yeah.
but again, one of those things that we already had. But that's again, if we were replacing it, this is what we would buy. So, I think that's as close as we're gonna get. Postar, would you like?
Oh, I bought an XL for the nose cone at the launch.
Yeah, but well, yeah, sure. If we're gonna replace it, yeah, fair enough. How much is that? 100, 118, 120?
25
Really?
for an XL.
Hold on, let me look. I guess I have the website open. 170.
All right, you ready for this number?
I don't think so, but bring it on.
Oh, sorry. There's the giant Nomex too, but that's not important, I guess.
Oh, how much was those? Aren't cheap though. We should probably throw that in there.
The 36 by 36.
Yeah, hold on. Pull it up. It's $26.
All right. And that's everything.
All right, let us have it.
For a grand total of $8,488.
You know what? I thought it was gonna be 10. Dude, that's crazy. I feel like in our head it was $3,000 for everything the whole time. At least in my
That's
head.
because you didn't buy hardware.
We were never counting the hardware. That's the...
And for this
It is
very reason, this is why we never took time to consider the hardware.
Well, yeah, I'm literally behind me on the floor for whatever reason. I have a bunch of hardware strung out, but I mean, it's probably at this point, 10 grand in hardware sitting on the floor.
Yeah, that's really disgusting to think about. Dude, that might, if we lost all of that and the whole rocket, that might drive us to just not fly rockets for a couple of years.
Oh yeah, probably.
We're gonna
or at least like nothing past 38.
Right, we're gonna have to take a break from this one for a hot minute.
Well, it's like me and Braden have been in it for long enough that we have acquired a bunch of hardware and parachutes and different things. A lot of it at a discount, or it was bought at a time where it was much cheaper. And so you just end up accumulating like all of this stuff over time, and that makes it a lot easier to like go in on a project like this, because you're like, we already have this, we already have this, we already have this. But if you're starting from scratch, it's like impossible. I mean, everything's possible for a price, but I mean, it's just like so expensive.
Right. Yeah.
But if you lose it all, that puts us in a really bad position too, because we kind of acquired a lot of it based on time.
Yeah, it's all I can say in response to that number is buy as much stuff used as you can. Try shop sales. Moreover, if you're smart with your finances and you're in a similar financial boat to us, don't build a 12-inch rocket. Because when it's all spread out over various credit cards and various months to a year worth of spending across 4 people, it doesn't seem so bad. But boy, when you put it at that $8,400 all at once mark, it sure makes me sad.
Yeah. But I mean, there's definitely, don't buy your motors full price. Get them during a sale or a BMS pre-order or whatever, whatever you can to not pay full price.
Yeah, once again, shout out
you
Wildman Club discount. Everything's always on sale for $30 a year. And yeah, BMS has the pre-order sales as well.
Yeah, and if you hit that Wildman Black Saturday, you got a good discount usually.
Yes, sir.
And like, if you're doing a project like this, you probably already have electronics. We didn't factor that in our price.
Yeah,
but
that's true. Throw another $120 on there.
Probably already have at least some motor hardware. I actually ended up, that was one of the things where like we didn't know what we were gonna do. We had most of the motor hardware we needed. We kind of like picked for the first flight of the Punisher anyway, our example, like we had like, okay, this is the hardware we have, what could we do? And it's like, okay, if we did this, we would only need 2 more 2560s and 2 3840s. But right after that, I just stumbled across I think, well, at the end of it all, we were still missing a 3840, but I got a smoking deal on two 2560s with closures and a 3840 with closures.
Right.
And so I just bought them because it was like basically almost half price of what a new one would be at the time. Now they're like, the prices went up since then, but just stuff like that. You know, sometimes if you just see a deal, you just have to jump on it, and then that will help you in the long run, although still in the red, technically. You were spending money.
It is worth noting, too, that, like, we definitely did not do any of this the cheap way. Like, the Arcus nose cone is a great example of something you can do if you want to build a huge rocket. Like I said, the nose cone for this project, for the Punisher, was $400. And we could probably build, like, 5 nose cones for the Arcus for that price.
It won't be the same.
No,
though.
no, it is a phenomenal piece of art that is irreplaceable for, again, reasons we don't need to get into. But Bryce Chanis is a great example of building giant rockets on the cheap, and I had talked to him in a text. It'd be really fun to have him on for an episode talking about, but you're basically combating everything that we just told you. And because when we did the level 3 episode, he brought up to me that none of us had to scratch build something. And yeah, I mean, he has giant rockets that he's probably built for like $45 if you get really down to bare minimums.
The only thing about scratch building at that level is like you're assuming that you have a fleet of tools at your disposal.
Right, that is true.
So there's, I mean, even for our build where we use a good number of off-the-shelf things, I mean, we still needed a lot of tools that I happen to have, but like stuff you need to build a rocket. So
yeah, I feel like that's kind of just presumed when it comes to scratch building in general, though. Because like if you have a jigsaw that can cut fins for a 4-inch rocket, you could cut 12-inch fin rockets or 12-inch rockets.
I just see a lot of people that are, you know, quote unquote scratch building, but like having somebody cut fins for them and rings for them and bulk plates. And
it's still, even at that point, if you know somebody, you got a guy, it might still work out.
If you got a guy,
affordably,
it just seems like a lot of people don't have a guy.
Yeah, I can tell you, Send Cut Send is not your guy if you want it to be cheaper.
Yeah, man, that I looked into that. It's so expensive.
It's really expensive.
But the Arcus we built's a pretty good example. I mean, of a kind of I would say mid-grade. It's not dirt cheap, but it is.
I mean, yeah,
I think we built it for under $5. The rocket itself was under $5.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm pretty sure it was like $375 for materials, and then not including epoxy and glass. So yeah, or like glass we used on the fins because it was with the sleeves. But yeah, that whole thing probably was under $500, which is, I mean, that's less than half we paid for just the tubes, or what we would pay to replace those tubes.
Yeah. Even with like the recovery gear, we're well under $1,000.
Yeah, and if it wasn't a 9-inch rocket and we had decided to do 8, we could have used sonotube, and it probably could have been under $300. But that is a topic for another day. At any rate, I think that is a good spot to wrap up our discussion on the massive rocket projects and the oversights that a lot of people will have with them. My name is Braden Carlson. You probably know me from Rocket Vlogs if you're here. And I'm going to let the other guys get their plugs out.
My name is Taylor Jesse, and you can find me on the Rocket channel on YouTube.
And my name is Shane Harris, or Postart, and you can find me at Postart Propulsions on YouTube.
If you guys want to have your viewer mail stuff sent in, we didn't really have much for this episode other than Bryce's comment, which I brought up in the middle. So reach out to me at rocketvlogs911@gmail.com. Send us your comments, questions, advice requests, anything like that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to press the subscribe button. Go subscribe. to Taylor and Shane's channels. We will see you guys next time.